the scenes with LTM.
Hey everybody, I'm Andrew Rosenstein and welcome to another episode of Behind the Scenes with LTM. Today we're going to be talking about props, stuff on stage. Is set design and furniture included in that? I don't know. We're going to find out. It's exciting. Today we'll be talking with Drusilla Carter and Stacey Navratil. Thank you very much for joining me, ladies.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good to be here.
Right off the bat, we'll just get some basic overview. What exactly does the props person do?
Makes a lot of very interesting things. And also, we find, so if it's not a costume and it's not a big piece of set, we find it and we make it happen.
From the set point, like if it's hammered and drilled and constructed and like permanent, constant fixture, most likely not us, unless it's small and decorative, in which case it is. It's kind of a weird blurry line there. So there's communications where it's like you have to talk to the set people and figure out where that line is. What's you, what's me? And then with the costumes people, it's kind of a less blurry. If somebody wears it, then it's probably not us. But if it's something that they carry with them, then it is. So knowing where that line is tricky. Okay. So we're kind of a gray area and we have fun with that.
So when it comes to determining what props are needed for a show, I'm guessing it just starts off with a meeting with the director and, where to go from there.
I think the first thing, actually, before we even meet with the director, is to look at the script. Props person goes through the script very carefully, looking at, every time anything is mentioned, so-and-so enters carrying bagpipes. Okay, well, there's a prop right there. He's carrying a thing. And then you sit down and meet with the director and say, okay, this is my list. This is what I think is going on. This is my starting point. What do you think?
It's always nice if you come in with the list because you're like, okay, so I say that, and I also try and highlight things that I think are going to be tricky. Like those bagpipes from Mamma Mia. It was like, are we really going bagpipes? Because the script says we could go bagpipes or we could go bongos maybe. Bongos might be easier to source. No, we really want those bagpipes. Okay. So it's, and then it just becomes give and take. And then through the course of the show, you may have the director say, he's doing, this person's over here and they need a little something to be doing in the background because they look stupid standing around. So can you get them an XYZ? Or, yeah, we know the script said that you needed 16 of these, but we only need maybe 2. So it gets modified and edited over the course of the show. So the communication has to be ongoing.
Some directors, you go in with your first list and you go over it, and that is exactly what you end up with. And then there are other directors who are really into the whole, hey, the actor had this idea and can you make this happen? Or you go, what would be really fun in this scene is if I found a taxidermy pheasant and put a tuxedo on it. And it kind of depends on the director, what way it's going to go. And it also depends to a certain extent on the kind of show. Straight plays, something like August Osage County, there's not as much room for improv just because of the structure of the show. But a lot of the musicals and some of the comedies, you have more room, just like the actors do, to play around.
You have a different perspective too, depending on the kind of show. I came into doing props more recently. It wasn't a lifetime skill for me when my kids started doing some children's theater. And so it was like, okay, here we go. We're doing, Disney shows. Okay, here we go. We need to make a bird's nest for the ugly duckling. And how are we going to make some eggs? Or how are we going to do, make broken things for Beauty and the Beast. And so some of that stuff, it's like, oh, we need an oversized whisk to torture a gingerbread man with. So I really like some of those shows that are more cartoony and not real, because I'd rather say, okay, how am I going to make a whisk that's as large as my leg and have to figure that out because that's a solution I'm coming up with, than have the script say, you need a 1957 radio. It's like, what does a 1957 ham radio look like exactly? And can I make that, or do I need to find an antique? And so I like the freedom of being like, look what I made. Isn't it fun? As opposed to be like, I found the thing.
When it comes to budget, is that something you find out about in the first meeting with the director to see what's realistic and what's not?
Yeah, it's usually the production team is given sort of budgets, so everybody knows, okay, sound has this much, and lighting has this much, props has this much. It's never enough for props,
Right.
Or costumes. I feel like we're the ones that are constantly going, "Uh-oh, I'm out of money." But it is something that you know about at the beginning, and I know Stacey and I make conscious efforts to, okay, can I get this free? Yeah. Okay, can I make this for free? Can I get it for under $5? And then you go, only as a last resort do you actually spend any kind of money.
And there's trade-offs with that. If there's something that you really, really need, this specific accurate thing, and you have to pay for that, then you know that somewhere else you're going to have to compromise. And that's also part of the conversation that comes up when the director is brainstorming, 3 weeks into the rehearsal process and says, wouldn't it be great if we had a kick line and everyone had a cane and a hat? And it's like, well, those canes run $6.75 a pop. So no, you cannot have 12 of them in a kick line because that would be our entire prop budget for that one song. So no, that's not practical. And sometimes you have to rein yourself in. Like, wouldn't it be great if we put more sparkle on this? And no, because you can't afford that. It's like, okay, well, we can go get some glitter from the kids section and a lot of glue as opposed to rhinestones and do it the cheap way.
Yeah, I think the highest budget I've ever had for props was $250.
Oh, wow.
So for some of the shows that are prop heavy, and bear in mind, you're also, doing curtains and set dressing and bedding or whatever, that can be really tight. So it's kind of a point of pride to always come in under budget, but sometimes it's by like 2 cents.
Do you find yourself doing a lot of research for certain things? And if you do, where do you usually look for inspiration?
I'm also a librarian, so I am really good at finding out, okay, what does that 1941 clock look like and exactly how is it decorated? I can go into the stacks and find pictures of most things. But then some stuff you're getting creative. You have to say, okay, does the costumer have a color scheme for this? Because you don't want to make something red when everything else is pink. And then you go, okay, from there you just kind of brainstorm and see what you can come up with. Especially for a lot of the more creative shows, certainly Shrek, there was not a whole lot of historic research happening. Unlike some of, Oklahoma, there was a little more, okay, what would be appropriate for this time period?
One of my biggest memories for Oklahoma, and I bless my mother on this one, was the director wanted to make the end about, Oklahoma, it's becoming a state. And so he wanted a flag. Well, we had to find a flag that was accurate to that time period. And now I've blocked out what number state Oklahoma was, but it wasn't one of the original 13 and it wasn't the 50th. It was somewhere in the 40s. And so I had to make a flag with the appropriate number of stars and the appropriate layout. Okay. And it was like, okay, so I bought a regular American flag because the stripes hadn't changed. And then I had to overlay the blue field with stars. And I sat there with my mom and we glued and sewed and stuck on the right amount of stars and the right lines and overlaid that onto a flag because you needed that accuracy.
You find that I think most of us have our individual strengths. If you want a whisk as big as your leg, Stacey is the gal to ask.
Okay.
If you want that, 1941 clock, I'm probably the one to ask. We kind of each develop our own strengths, and it partially is what shows you've worked on, and partially it's just kind of your knowledge base, I guess, that you bring to it.
When you're looking for props for a show, not making them, but when you're in search of things, do you have your go-to places?
Stacey's the queen of savers.
Yes.
She is always finding things there. I tend to work my network of contacts. So, for example, we needed a steering wheel for one show. The director wanted a steering wheel, and it needed to be from a classic car. And I was like, I am on this. So it was a matter of finding somebody who happened to have a steering wheel that wasn't attached to his car and can I borrow this for a month and a half?
I'm way too paranoid for that. I get very nervous borrowing things from people because stuff happens. And so I almost always will try, and if I can find a way to buy one or get one donated, I'm a big fan of like Buy Nothing networks on Facebook to be like, hey, free sell donate. Anyone want to donate this? And I always tend to see if I can find one free somewhere rather than having to go back to someone I know and love and be like, yeah, you know that thing? Yeah. But one thing we should talk about, if we're talking about where we get stuff from, one of the huge assets we have at LTM is the attic. It's a magical place.
That's exactly what I was going to get to next, actually. So I'm guessing it's cataloged. Like, is it written down?
No, and as a librarian, this pains me greatly that there is no kind of record. It tends to be, so if somebody needs something or someone wants to borrow something, Stacey and I and Karen will get an email from Dwayne saying, hi, someone wants a candlestick-style telephone. Do you have one? And you're like, do we have one in the attic? Yes, it's on the third set of shelves to your left on the top. We just kind of have gotten to know where things are, but there's no official record.
I mean, we've gone through and we've organized it and we put like stuff together. So here's all the weapons are in this cabinet and all the dishes are on the shelf and all of the fake flowers are in this bin. So stuff is grouped together. It's organized as best we can, but stuff comes in for shows. Like we wind up, if we go from doing, a Western like Oklahoma, and then the next year we did Addams Family. And so next to your, 1800s rifles, now we've got a chandelier with skulls on it. And so the attic it's living history.
That leads into my next question. Has there ever been anything that someone wanted that you just couldn't find anywhere?
Something that I was looking for that I couldn't find. It was such a small thing and it wound up not being necessary, but I was making myself crazy. One of the props for Oklahoma in the script was a rug beater. And a rug beater is like this like wicker thing. It looks like a wicker tennis racket, and you would take it out and you would use it to like whack your rugs with back in the day. And that's how you would clean the dust out of your rugs and blankets and stuff. And someone was supposed to chase somebody else out with a rug beater because they were being annoying and I was like, okay, I had to figure out what it was. So then there was Google. And then where do you buy this? Do I have to make this? I don't want to have to get like wicker and try and make a thing. And then I was at Savers. And I was looking for this thing and I couldn't find it. Found 6 other props I needed, was checking out. The lady in front of me had one in her cart. And I was looking at this lady. I was like, that's really cool. Where'd you find that?
I was going to say you just took it when she was looking at something else.
It's that moment where it was like, do I offer her an extra $20 to let me buy the rug beater? And I was like, no, budget is low. No. And that wound up being something where it was like, talk to the director, was like, she can chase him with the frying pan. She can chase him with the broom. She can chase him with this. And it's like they wound up just like grabbing something else off of the porch on the set for her to chase the guy off with. And it wasn't a big deal, but it was one of those things that I was like, I need this thing. It says this thing in my spreadsheet. And that's the trick, is you can't get too locked in to any one thing because it's an art. It's flexible. There has to be that room for things. Unless you're singing an entire song that's ode to the rug beater, it doesn't matter that much.
Most of the time there are substitutions that you can make. Sometimes not so much. They're very rarely. So, for example, Murder on the Orient Express, there's this whole business with Poirot has a hat box and it had to have a hat rest, and then they had to have a spirit lamp, and it's very specific in the script. We could not have gotten away without that exact combination of props. But most of the time you can kind of budget a little bit, or you can be like, okay, I can't find a rug beater, but I can find a whisk broom. Can we use that instead? Kind of thing. Although actually, I think I do know where to find a rug beater. So if you ever need one, let me know.
Aside from props and set dressing, when it comes to food and drinks, are you in charge of that as well?
Yes, that does come down to props. And, some shows it's easy. Some shows it specifically says, oh, they're eating breakfast. So you're like, okay, guess what? You get a muffin.
Yeah.
Some shows are a little more complicated. The Normal Heart, for example, we went through
The milk.
gallons of milk, even though the milk was watered down. It specifically said Twinkies, and then the script actually called for a certain kind of chips, but the actor who had to eat them didn't like those, so I had to find a different kind. But yeah, you're in charge of those, and sometimes food is actually treated like food, and sometimes it gets thrown around the set, and it's more of a prop than actual food. But that is our job.
Have you ever cooked anything and run it up for every show?
We did. I'm trying to remember the show that had goulash. It's been a while.
I was just thinking about the goulash too.
Barefoot in the Park.
Yeah.
It was goulash.
Interesting.
So every night somebody had to wait downstairs by the microwave until the exact right time so that it would be hot when it came upstairs, so that the actors were not eating cold goulash.
Which was in fact Dinty Moore beef stew from a can, but
Yes.
so we're not cooking down there fresh. It's like pop the can, nuke the can. Here you go, kids, enjoy.
You cannot have alcohol consumed on stage. What have you used for substitutes for various scenes?
Iced tea is the go-to. If an actor is drinking whiskey or beer or pretty much anything, they're probably drinking iced tea. Seltzer or ginger ale or champagne. And then it's usually, if it's red wine, it's usually some kind of juice. What kind is often up to the individual actor. I know for Orient Express, the actor who had to drink red wine didn't like plain cranberry juice, which is what we normally would have used. So he got cran raspberry instead, so it was still the right color. When
you have props on stage that either get thrown or used or broken, how do you manage that stuff?
Depends on what it is. For the 39 steps, every night before the show, I walked to the vacant lot across the street and got a stick. And every night, Ed broke the stick. So it was like you just knew that it was disposable, because it wasn't really supposed to be disposable, but he decided it was going to be. Some things you build so that they can be put back together. I know in August Osage County, they actually had to find some dishes that were designed to break and be put back together.
And then, yeah, you just like the exploding bluebird from Shrek. So that was hooked to an air compressor. And when the air compressor was on, the pressure blew the head off. And it was kind of like put together like Easter eggs for an Easter egg hunt. You could just kind of pop it back on and then it would blow off the next night. And after a weekend or two, maybe you need to go back and do some touch-up paint, but you make it to be rebuilt. And then anytime you're dealing with food, if people have to eat food on stage, you're just keeping a stash of that in the fridge. And it's like, okay, at intermission, we need to wash the dishes and make sure we have another muffin for tomorrow ready to go. And so then you're just planning ahead and buying multiples of some of that expendable stuff.
When you have to specifically make something for a show, like you said, the fantasy stuff like Shrek or Addams Family, do you do most of it in the shop? Does the shop have all the resources you need, or do you find yourself going to Joann Fabrics a lot?
The shop has a lot of like wood and paint and tools and hinges. So if you're making more furniture-y stuff, then the shop is really useful. For softer goods, like one of the things that kind of tacks onto the whole reusable prop. So one of the things in Shrek was Fiona's in the tower and she's singing about how miserable her life is. And she has books and she's been reading these books about princesses all her life and she rips it. And it was like, okay, we need a book that she can rip in half. And then it's like, okay, so I go to Savers and I find some fairy tale books. And then I go to Joann and I buy some Velcro and I open up the spine of the book and I put Velcro in so she can do that. And so that little more things that are more crafty as opposed to construction, I tend to do at home in my basement. I actually have been known to, since I'm a librarian and we tend to have a lot of craft supplies in the children's department and spaces to work on stuff, I have been known to annex corners of the library because, especially if it's a complicated set, there is no room in the shop. There's no place to leave something because they're using every corner of it.
Okay.
So you end up being like, all right, I need a corner where I can paint something and let it dry. And, I'm annexing this corner and it's going to dry here and I'm going to check on it on my lunch break. I've also been known to do a lot of stuff at, I have a craft area downstairs and it's like, okay, I'm going to do this thing down here. And then I have to figure out how to get whatever it is to the theater in one piece.
Okay.
depending on what you're making, sometimes it's easier to just assemble it on the stage. I know Stacey and I have both done that, but you bring the pieces and you're like, okay, we're just going to borrow a section of the stage and you guys got to work around us for a bit.
Let's see. Oh, fire.
Ooh.
We're in charge of fire.
When have we had fire, Stacey? We had fire in Murder on the Orient Express.
That was the only time I've gotten to play with fire for real.
I've had candles in a couple of shows. And I've also had birthday candles. And for all of that, you have to get the fire marshal to approve.
I was going to ask that. Yep.
For next to normal, we had birthday candles. And I remember he walked in, he went, "That's it? That's all you're lighting? Yeah, you're good." And walked out again. But they do have to.
The spirit lamp for Murder on the Orient Express was a little bit more nerve-wracking because it was like, it's a glass lamp filled with alcohol and then you're going to light that with a wick. And it's like, oh, if someone drops that could be a problem. And it was like, is there, and so we had to have a bucket of water right off stage. And so you could, if when it came off, you could douse it. And if you needed to dunk it, you could, or you could splash the water. So you have to have those backup plans in place.
In regards to rehearsals, obviously everyone tries to get the set and props done as quick as possible so everyone can get used to them and start working with them. But I know a lot of time things don't show up till later. Does a director give you deadlines, or do you just kind of do your thing and make things and bring them in as you need?
That's one of the things that usually gets brought up in the first production meeting. It's like, okay, what's your timeline for? We find out from Dwayne, front of house, when our load-in date is, and that's when the set's supposed to be done and when the stage is officially ours for the show as opposed to actual rentals and other outside groups that might be coming in. So my goal is usually to have everything done that I can do at home by that load-in date. I don't always like to leave stuff there early because if there's still construction and sawdust and stuff going on, or there's still outside rentals, I worry about stuff wandering to places it shouldn't be. I have a tendency to find something that's sort of good and leave that if I can. It's like, here, you're supposed to have a gun, but here is this plastic thing from the dollar store, and you can use this plastic gun so you have something to start getting used to playing with. So I like to give people temporary stuff if I can, just so they get used to grabbing for a thing. It's like, here, your microphone is now this whisk, not a big whisk, but just a regular small one. Or something so they have something to work with. And then as I can get closer to getting stuff done, I start swapping it out with the real thing. Sometimes you're waiting on stuff until the very last minute, and that's a little scary, and that's where the communication comes in.
I was going to say, you often have to say, all right, what is the most important thing? Or if there's something that an actor needs more practice using, you kind of prioritize that so that they have it as long as possible to work with, rather than going, it's dress rehearsal, here's your prop that you've never used before.
Enjoy. Yeah, there was a good segue into my next question. Obviously you have to work closely with actors at some point as well, so when it comes to organizing props backstage, there's tables where you have props laid out. It's supposed to be in the same spot every single night. Like, is that something that you control, or does that get to the stage manager's realm at that time?
So usually someone from the props department, whether it's, like if Stacey and I are both working on a show, one of us is there for every show. I am, again, a librarian, so everything is labeled. There is no excuse for not knowing where a prop goes. And I try to remind the actors that if you have a prop and you're the one who handles it and it doesn't make it back to that spot, I can't help you. I don't know what you did with it.
Yeah.
And most stage managers will be kind of, look, when you are holding the prop and when you take the prop off that table, that is your responsibility as an actor. And then once it gets back to the table, it's the responsibility of the props person to make sure that it's fixed or it's moved to where it needs to go next.
Yeah, I've worked with stage managers who are super, super meticulous with this, to the point that, like, on the props table, they actually outlined like the police dead body outline of the prop. And it was like, look, there is a, gun shaped and blank on this, where did that piece, so they can look at it and be like, there's a hole and it's shaped like this, and I need you to find the thing that goes in that shape. And it was like a puzzle on that table, because you would know at an instant, on that piece of white paper with all those little black outlines, what exactly was missing.
All right, let's get into the fun stuff. What's the most interesting, fun, or complex prop you've ever had to make? What did you like doing the most?
Oh my, that's a good one. I'm still a big fan of that whisk. I don't know why. That was one of my first shows that I did.
A whisk.
That was one of those things where I was like, you need a what? And then you have things that, you are so happy to see the back of. For Addams family, there was this whole scene where we had to make fake legs that were hanging down for an actor. And it was like, how do you make legs that look like legs? And it wound up being stockings. And I shoved liter soda bottles in the stockings and then something else to make a knee. And then like, that doesn't look right. And I think I went through like 5 different prototypes on that show for that one song, for that one scene, because I could not get that vision to work. And some things you're just never so happy to throw away during strike. And you're like, I never want to see this again.
My favorite prop ever, well, I have 2. My personal favorite is Fred, the taxidermied pheasant from the 39 Steps.
That's a good one.
I acquired this taxidermied pheasant for the show, and the director looked at it and said, you know what? He needs a hat. So I made a tuxedo.
That's cool.
For a taxidermied pheasant. I was very fond of Fred. We named him Fred. I was very sad to send him back to his owner. But I do still have his tuxedo. Because I'm sure that's going to come in handy someday. And I also, for the same show, it was actually written into the script that the lead actor looks at a map in the first scene, and it's supposed to be kind of a normal size map. And then he pulls the map out again, and it's bigger. And then he pulls it out again, and it's even bigger. I mean, I had something like 10 foot by 10 foot map for the final one. And I had to let the actor throw that away at the end because he was so annoyed at this giant map that he was supposed to pull out and read, and it was, taller than he was. And then had to get folded up every night. And so that map is no more. But I had great fun making successively bigger maps.
Are there ever any props on stage that aren't what it looks like? What would you say the most creative use of a material that you've done to make something?
So the one that I'm proudest of, because I understand from the audience you couldn't tell, I had a show where an actor had to cut and eat a slice of cake. It was specified in the script that the cake had to have buttercream frosting, so it had to look a certain way. And trying to figure out how to do that without having to either feed the poor guy stale cake every night or bake a new cake every night. I had a cake that was styrofoam, covered in like a plaster with trim, this like scalloped frosting edging was made from fabric that was twisted and coated in plaster. But that cake had one wedge cut out of it. And in that one wedge went a slice of real cake so that he could cut and eat that slice of real cake. And I had great fun matching the styrofoam to the size of my baking pans so that slice would actually fit in the hole and not be visibly different. And, I guess there were people who thought that I was baking a new cake every night. And I was like, no.
Great.
But I will say that the actual cake did have buttercream frosting because I aim for accuracy.
Stacey, what have you made that you were most proud of with an obscure material?
One of my favorite things for Addams family, Uncle Fester had a jetpack. So he was flying off to the moon in the final scene and he needed a jetpack. So I found a backpack at Savers, my favorite place. And then to make like the little like canisters of the jet fuel or whatever, 2-liter soda bottles, spray painted silver, and then a can of fake hairspray rigged inside with a little trigger that sprayed fake hairspray when he pulled a thing and it looked like it was steam coming out of it. So you can take like, oh, look, here's a jelly jar lid and we're going to turn that into a dial. And you take stuff and you glue it together and you spray paint it and you get enough hot glue and spray paint on anything and you can make it look fabulous from 50 feet away. I mean, a lot of the stuff you make for those imaginary shows, if someone gets too close to it, they'd be like, hey, wait, that's not a tree stump. Like, no. No,
Yeah.
it's a garbage can covered in burlap. Okay.
Awesome.
Things like medication. We've had a number of shows where an actor has had to either have medication or take medication. You get really good at knowing what kinds of candy or what edible objects look like pills. I know for Harvey, I had a whole pharmacy going. If anyone had walked into my dining room the day I was bottling pills and putting labels on bottles, they would have wondered. You get good at walking through like Savers or Home Depot and going, what could I make out of this? And you go, I could make a tree stump out of this trash can and some burlap. It's about seeing how you could use things differently.
And a lot of the things too, in addition to just having to make stuff up, you also want to make most of your things lightweight. If you're going to be carrying stuff on and off stage during set changes, you can't have it be heavy. So that trash can and burlap is going to be a lot lighter than an actual tree stump would be. For Kiss Me Kate, we had in a couple of the scenes that came back and forth a couple times this fountain. And it was these individual little trapezoid pieces, and they were for wine stomping, and then we turned them a different way, and there was Velcro fronting on them that would get swapped out to turn it from the wooden casks for the wine stomping, and then we put the brick facing on them, and the little trapezoids would become now the bottom of a fountain, but the actual part where the water came up was a stack of stuff from the dollar store. It was like, look, here's a plastic punch bowl and a serving tray and a foam football and some plates and some vases and I think a couple children's sand buckets from the beach. And it was like you stacked it all up. We drilled a hole through the middle, put a dowel through to hold it all steady, and then glued the pieces together as we stacked up. And we played random plastic stuff from the dollar store Jenga. Only lost a little bit of blood and tears and then painted it and it looked beautiful.
That sounds like a lot of work.
But that's the fun stuff is if you go there and you're there and it's like, okay, we're here on a Sunday afternoon with this pile of stuff and we're going to make a thing. And you just laugh through it. You're like, wait, no, we got to turn that bowl upside down. What are you talking about? And it's just, it's a game. It's a puzzle. And it's a chance to be like, how can I make this look like what it should?
If you could summarize in one sentence why you love being a part of this aspect of theater, what would it be? What drives you to props?
For me, it's really my only into the theater. I can't sing, I can't dance, and I turn fuchsia if you ask me to be on stage in front of people. So no, that's never going to happen. But I love being a part of the theater. I love that sense of camaraderie. I love the experimentation and the imagination and the creative outlet. And I think it's so fun to be a part of things. For me, I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I like being able to do stuff that does not involve my kids. So this is an outlet for me in a lot of ways that I don't have in my day-to-day life. And so being able to do props is a way to be a part of the process without being necessarily skilled in any of the theater arts.
Most of the time when I am in LTM, I'm either in the lighting booth or I am assistant stage managing. Those seems to be the things that I do most of. But props has much more outlet for creativity. You know, if you're running the light board, you're pushing the button when you're supposed to push the button. They get really mad if you get creative with pushing the buttons. So props gives you a chance to, make stuff. And then to actually see a thing that you made get used, or again, with lighting, people don't really notice that the lights have changed color. I mean, they notice when the lights go on and when they go off, but people notice when someone walks on stage carrying a taxidermy pheasant in a tuxedo. They notice when you have a 10-foot square map. They're things that are always seem a little more integral to the kind of experience. And it can be a lot of fun to come up with whatever strange thing needs to be come up with.
Great answers. Well, thank you. Thank you all for doing what you do and helping bring this theater to life. It's not an easy job, and I give you major props.
I've been waiting for that one for the past, I don't know.
I was up till 2 a.m.
I was really hoping we'd make it through this without that particular joke, but
it's so cringy it had to happen. Well, thank you very much for joining me. We'll be doing new videos every few weeks and posting them on YouTube. If you have any questions about anything we talked about in this video or topics you would like to see discussed, you can email us at bts@cheneyhall.org. To find our new videos when they're posted, you can go to www.cheneyhall.org/YouTube or find us on Facebook at Little Theatre of Manchester. Links to these, as well as our other social media pages, can be found in the description box below. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.
Behind the scenes with